Today's episode is one that hits home in the best way. Today we're joined by Blue, the powerhouse behind Neurodivergent Grappler on Instagram and a fierce purple belt competitor. She's using her voice to carve space for folks just like us in the Jiu Jitsu community and beyond. Both Blue and I are neurodivergent. Blue has ADHD and I have autism and ADHD. We are sitting down today not just as athletes, but advocates, survivors of burnout, and forever students of the game. We're talking about what it's like to learn and train in an environment that wasn't designed with our brains in mind. We'll unpack the myths, like the idea that all autistic people are just naturally good at jiu-jitsu, and share what's actually helpful in making training accessible, sustainable, and joyful. If you've ever felt like your brain works differently on the mats, or if you're a coach, teammate, or loved one trying to better understand how to support the neurodivergent grapplers and loved ones in your life, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to Chokeholds and Chill.
Alrighty. Woo. All right. So we'll jump into it. So welcome to another episode of Chokeholds and Chill. I'm Mallory.
And I am Jen. And today we have a very special guest. We would like to introduce the face/voice behind the Neurodivergent Grappler Instagram page. We have Blue.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Yeah, so we're so happy to have you here. So yeah, if you just want to kind of share a little bit of your background, who you are, where you're from, how long you've been training, whatever fun stuff you want to share.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Blue, and yes, that's my real name. And I'm a purple belt, and I've been training jiu-jitsu for about 7 years now. And I also have started about a year ago judo, and I have an orange belt in judo. Stand-up game is still struggle bus, but it's gotten a lot better, and in competitions it's shown to have gotten better. But anyways, I am based in Denver, Colorado. I grew up in Denver, but was born in Japan. My mom's Japanese, and my dad is Black. He was originally from Chicago. And so, yeah, parents met abroad and got married, had 3 kids, me included. And so I moved to Denver with my family when I was around 6 years old. My athletic career or anything goes, I didn't really play too much sports growing up. I did Taekwondo as a kid. I also did track and field in high school. I did basketball in middle school, but I didn't really get to explore too much of the athletic side growing up. I mostly was on the academic side a lot and doing like AP and stuff like that. I didn't get into jiu-jitsu until I was 25 years old. I'm 32 now. And how I got into jiu-jitsu was basically I started with Muay Thai. A former friend, we had a falling out, but prior to that, she introduced me to Muay Thai. And on the other side of the mat, there was jiu-jitsu, and I was really scared to cross that line because everyone's sweaty and gross. And I mentioned in the questions, what about jiu-jitsu I don't like necessarily is the sweat and the odor. I'm really sensitive to that. So
yes.
I just, especially for men, they smell like wet mold and
I say they smell like cat pee.
Yeah, cat pee. Yes, cat and dog pee, and that triggers me so bad. And that's my neurodivergence. Is I'm very smell sensitive, so that's a sensory issue I have. Even myself, I know when I smell bad. And other people are like, no, you smell fine. I'm like, no, I don't. I smell really bad.
I can totally relate to that part of it.
Yeah, so I have to shower before I go train because I get really paranoid about my odor. So everyone's like, yo, I smell good. And I'm like, good. That's what I like.
Joel's, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's my jiu-jitsu or my short summary. I've quit jiu-jitsu or taken breaks many times before. I've competed many times before also. So I've taught at a certain capacity as well, help assist class. I've taught kids, I've taught adults. So I feel like I've done a little bit of everything within the jiu-jitsu realm.
That's awesome. So I'm excited. We're going to dive into some of those things a little bit later too, including your sensory issues. So I'm excited to hear more. But right now, I wanted to know what inspired you to start the Neurodivergent Grappler page, and where did that come about?
Yeah, so it came about specifically, I was struggling with competition, and towards the end of my blue belt was when I decided, like, okay, I'm going to compete so that I can prove to everyone that I'm good at jiu-jitsu and I can do this. And because blue belt, I was just at this plateau, and I would compete occasionally, but I wouldn't do well. I'd have panic attacks, and at the time I was training at a gym where, like, they just didn't really understand me, and I just thought just because that gym had a bunch of winners and people who competed a lot that they could help me.
Right.
But unfortunately, like, that gym couldn't help me. The feedback I'd get after competing was always like, you should have done this. Why did you do this? Why you look terrible out there. Like, you look scared. You're so stiff. And it just wasn't helping me. And so, yeah, so towards the end of blue belt, like, I started cross training at the gym I go to now called The Compound, and I have friends there. And so I cross trained while I was training at this other gym. And then I slowly started to realize, like, oh, this other gym's a lot better for me. It's more laid back, but they train hard and in a good way. And the woman that trains there, that is like my primary training partner, Miriam, and her husband, Mike, who's a black belt, like, they really helped me and, like, spoke to me. And, like, I sat down and spoke with Mike about, like, what my goals are and things like that. And he really helped, like, hone in. And then also at the time, there was another black belt there, Zach, who helped and, like, showed me, like, he's a smaller guy, so he showed me his game and stuff like that. But anyways, as far as, like, why I started was because so I competed and I burned out, and then I got my purple belt, and I just felt nothing. Like, I felt numb, and I just felt like I wasn't excited or anything like that. But I still felt like, oh, I needed to compete to prove something. And then I did Nogi Worlds in 2023, and I, like, totally crashed out. I had a panic attack. It felt like the first time I was competing. That was how bad it was. And I'm just like, I just did a bunch of competitions. I won Nogi pans, what the hell, at blue belt. But then coming into this new level, like, my body was exhausted. I was just, like, burned out. So I started this page because I was just really frustrated with my experience training, and I felt like I couldn't really connect with anyone about what I was going through. I would look up things online about, like, neurodivergence and training, and there was nothing really about that besides, like, the jokes about autism and, like, oh, everyone who does jiu-jitsu has a little bit of autism. No, that's not true. Come
right
on. So, like, there was no valid sources, or there was no firsthand experience. And, like, I had a feeling, like, I know there's people out there who are neurodivergent, who have ADHD, who've been able to successfully train jiu-jitsu. Like, I want to know, like, so it was just that experience, the culmination of all my experiences put together. And that's the reason why I started this page, kind of hoping that I could build a community and, like, maybe, hope to help somebody.
Yeah. And that was my follow-up question, is, like, if you felt like your page has helped you form a community that, like, makes you feel more seen and supportive, because obviously we connected with you through your page.
Yes.
And there's a lot of, like, you have so much great content and, like, different point of view that I think is so valuable. So, like, we appreciate your page so much. I know a ton of people do. So, like, how do you feel about this kind of community that you've created?
Yeah, this community is, like, so special to me. makes me realize that I'm not alone, and most people who follow me, they don't know who I am, and that's not the goal of the page. It's not to spotlight me, it's more so to spotlight neurodivergence in jiu-jitsu, and to really get rid of that stigma that comes with being neurodivergent. I think as a whole, our culture stigmatizes neurodivergence, so we go our whole lives trying to mask. So it's nice to be, or like to be able to create a space where people don't have to mask or try to be someone else, that they see a post and like, oh my God, like this just happened to me recently, or like, wow, like, so I've been gaslit the whole time I've been training, or whatever. So I've gotten messages. I've been to tournaments too where people come up to me, they somehow know it's me, and they're like, you run that page. I'm like, yes, I do.
That's so great.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning being gaslit, and you talked a little bit a few minutes ago about your experience with your first gym and feeling like you were not being respected and, getting yelled at and things. So how has your experience with bullying or being misunderstood, how has that shaped your journey in jiu-jitsu and possibly judo too?
Yeah, so I actually changed gyms 4 times.
Oh,
The gym that I mentioned to you was my third gym.
okay.
So the first gym I went to was a chain school, and that was where my friend introduced me to the Muay Thai program, and then I went over to the Jiu-Jitsu side, and over time I realized it just wasn't for me. And at the time I didn't really know I was neurodivergent or had ADHD too, but it just felt not right to me. And then during the pandemic, I dated a black belt who was older, and he just basically told me to come train with him and was basically manipulating me and saying all these bad things about the gym I was training at. And I was oblivious to that. So I was like, okay, sure, I'll train with you there. And I don't talk too much about this story because, like, I was a full-grown adult. I wasn't a child and being groomed or anything like that. But at the same time, I was impressionable, and I didn't really have boundaries and didn't know how to say no and all that stuff. And I didn't know much about jiu-jitsu. This guy has been doing jiu-jitsu or like been in the martial arts community for like 20 plus years. So he's like reputable in my eyes. So he like took me into his school, and then I realized like this guy is manipulating me and gaslighting me, and he's not actually helping me with my jiu-jitsu. He's just emotionally abusing me because he just got divorced and needs a Band-Aid or something. And when I finally decided to leave, he was calling me and saying like, I could get you to purple belt, like,
oh my
I'll
God,
get you there. And I'm just like, no, you're not. So that experience like put me behind, and like I have to hold myself accountable to that experience too, but also knowing that like I was struggling with my mental health, and I was also like didn't know or understand the culture with jiu-jitsu, and just because someone's a black belt and has 20 plus years of experience doesn't necessarily mean they're a good person either. So the third gym I went to was the gym where I started to actually compete as a blue belt. And from that gym, like I could say that there were good pieces to it where, I started to kind of find my stride at blue belt a little bit at that gym, and like the push to compete was there, which I really needed. I really wanted to compete, and the coaches did show up, which was good, but I think they showed up in a way in which it wasn't right for me, and the coaching wasn't right for me. And so over time, I started to cross train, and that gym primarily focused on no-gi a lot, which wasn't something I was too interested in. I wanted to do both. And have a good balance. So I feel like my experience like changing gyms 4 times, I don't want to say it put me behind, but I think it definitely put me on like so many different courses that, as someone with ADHD, it like pivoted my focus, and it just made me not focus more. It derailed me a bit going through that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, because unfortunately that is not a story that is solo there. There's a lot of gyms that have experiences like that. We did a podcast a while back where we talked about like abuse and manipulation and stuff in the Jiu Jitsu community, because it's a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that you had to experience that, but we appreciate you sharing that with us and being transparent, because I think that it's another thing that people can really relate to.
So you mentioned like you had some difficulty with, you didn't realize that you had ADHD. And I want to touch a little bit on this part of it too, before we talk about just general statements. You mentioned something that resonates with me. You didn't see the danger of what this person was presenting to you because you didn't realize, or may not, you just weren't looking at it maybe in that lens. But I think with neurodivergency, there is a huge, people don't realize that we may be reading a situation or a relationship completely different than it actually is. And not in one case, but in a lot of cases, even if our the hairs on the back of my neck might stand up, but then my mind is like, well, wait, maybe you're just being rude, right?
Yep.
So stating that you are a grown woman, adult that is experiencing the same type of grooming that is put on children is very important, because there's definitely a higher rate for any kind of sexual assault because we can't see things sometimes and it's not as clear as we'd like it to be. So I just wanted to touch back on that and point out that it's not shame that you were an adult. This is a problem. He took advantage of a person, that you're not reading things all the time the same way.
Yeah, I was going to also comment on the fact that with neurodivergence, there's a bit of childishness or immaturity, or we may not catch on to certain social cues as quickly as our neurotypical people go. So, I used to minimize what I went through with that black belt. And, I remember right after leaving that gym and trying to move on, I was so angry with him. And then I posted about him, and I didn't name him, but he knew it was him. So he texted me and lashed out, and then I felt more guilty.
Oh my gosh.
And, worse about myself. So I just shut down, and I was just surrounded by people who just basically kept confirming oh, you're the bad person. You're bad. You're immature. You don't have anything good to offer. And then I got into a vicious cycle of people pleasing because I wasn't likable. I wasn't desirable. People didn't want to train with me. People didn't want to hang out with me outside the gym. So I just fell into this trap again, and it reminded me of my experience in high school, middle school. Pretty much my whole schooling, I was experiencing the same thing in Jiu Jitsu, where, okay, I'm tiptoeing and I'm trying to not be immature. I'm masking so much. And then I get rejected. Then rejection sensitivity hits. And then I'm spiraling, and then the cycle begins over and over.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah. So when you say that when you kind of struggled when you were younger as well, when did you get an official diagnosis? Is it neurodivergent or on the spectrum when you were younger? Because I know with females, it's there's much less diagnosis in females versus males. And also the world has advanced and changed very much since me and you are the same age pretty much. So it wasn't as commonly recognized when we were kids and growing up. Right. So it's there's so many more people on the spectrum and blah, blah, blah. No, we just know more.
Right.
And it's recognized more. So how old were you when that was really recognized and kind of validated?
Sure. So I was diagnosed with ADHD, I believe, when I was either 26 or 27. And I was not diagnosed with autism. My psychiatrist, he didn't believe I had that autism. And as far as autism goes, I made a post a little while ago about how when people talk about autism, it's from a very like white male perspective.
Yes.
So a lot of times people like the archetype of the autistic person is a white man.
It's like Rain Man.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but there's, women have autism, but, because society, is constructed in a way where women are made to behave and act proper and be feminine, we get really good at masking a lot quicker than boys do. Boys typically, there's that attitude, oh, boys will be boys, oh, whatever, he's
Right.
just being rough, so they don't catch on to the masking as quick as women do. So often because women are masking, doctors miss the sign of autism because we've gotten so good at it. So they don't believe that you have autism. And then when they finally get diagnosed later, as they get older, they're like, what the hell? Like, you have autism? You don't look autistic.
Literally what my family said. Same words.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you're autistic. Like, and they assume that someone who has autism is completely disabled. And granted, yes, it's a disability, but they think you're so mentally incapacitated or like incapable that you can't hold a job, you can't have a family, you can't have a normal life. And so, autism has always been like very white male centric thing when people from all walks of life can have autism.
Right. That's why it's called a spectrum, right? Like it's such a broad spectrum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So what would you say, like, some of the most common or biggest challenges that you as a neurodivergent grappler face, like, early on in your jiu-jitsu career?
For me, I felt like my brain would pick things up, but then my body was not doing the movement. So it felt like a delay, or like it just wouldn't move the way I wanted to move. So I feel like I was really clumsy and I struggled to like really coordinate my body with the movements, and like my brain was able to see the movements and like replay the movements in my head. But then when I try to execute it with my body, it just was not doing it. And then another struggle I faced early on was just like the smell of the people. That triggered me a bit. The let's see, like the texture of the gi, and also like the rash guards. So another thing I want to say about like ADHD and autism is like there's a lot of similarities to it, but yeah, just to put it out there, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have ADHD or autism or both. It could be one or the other. It could be both. But anyways, but yeah, I had issues with like gi textures. So, the loner gis I would get, I didn't like how it felt. I really like gis that are not too stiff.
Oh yeah.
And more flexible. And so like I've tried so many different gi brands over the years, and so that led me to waste so much money. I ended up giving away or like selling the gis that I tried. And now I have a brand that like I'm set on, so I'm definitely not gonna venture out. I know everyone's like all about shoyu roll, but to be honest, I don't like shoyu roll. I don't like how stiff it feels.
Can we ask what the brand is that you are settled on?
No, I'm gonna gatekeep. No.
Yes.
It's Kings. I like Kings.
Oh, I love Kings.
Mallory's go-to.
That's one of my favorite gis that I have.
Yes. I really feel like I have a friend who has autism. She loves Kings, and I have another friend who has ADHD and he loves Kings. And I'm just like, I think Kings is like the go-to neurodivergent brand. Just from
I
my
need to get one.
Yeah, no, I like currently might be pending a divorce because my husband accidentally dried my perfect fitting King's gi pants, and now they're
Oh my
not like
God.
they're not comp appropriate anymore. So
They're like spats now.
yeah, so we're having a hard time. No, I'm just kidding.
He'll buy you a new one.
But yeah, he owes me a new King's gi. So
Yes. Yes.
oh, I love that though. King's is a great brand. Well, we'll have to shout them out, get them to sponsor you.
There you go.
I know. That'd be nice.
Oh man. So you're talking about, I want to be back here. I wanted to go back a little bit about some of your challenges. So I had quite the opposite, or have still. I danced forever. So movement for me is very, very easy. If I can figure out how it goes, then I have no problem. But the problem is when someone is speaking, it takes about 2 weeks for my brain to like be like, oh, that's what they meant. So it takes a long time for me to like put the mind body connection, but in the reverse of yours.
Yes. And it's funny you say that because as soon as someone speaks, or like I've gotten good at masking and kind of seeing between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
So like I could tell when someone's fucking with me or like joking or being sarcastic or like trying to go around whatever. I'm good at that. But the body coordination, the movement is so awkward.
Yeah.
For me. Even when I compete, like I watch myself compete, I'm just like, ugh. Yuck. Like, what the hell? I look like a baby giraffe.
Oh, that's funny. So how do you personally approach learning new techniques with the difficulties of the ADHD?
Yeah, so for me, I like to watch the technique. Like I watch videos. For me, the struggle with ADHD in the beginning was that I wanted to focus on everything. And I think part of that too was because I was a white belt, a blue belt, and you just want to absorb everything and like get good at everything.
Yeah.
But the matter of fact is like with Jiu Jitsu, like you're not going to be good at everything. You have to like specialize. You can't be jack of all trades in this sport because then, you're okay at a bunch of moves, but you don't have a signature go-to that you're really specialized in. So for me right now, like I'm really studying the hell out of De La Hiva. And I actually started cross-training at the school where they specialize in that, where the professor is specifically good at that. And I spoke to my professor at my home gym about my guard retention and my guard in general. And he watched my comp videos and he's just like, I feel like in your brain you're struggling because you're trying to switch from spider to lasso to De La Hiva, but it's like not connecting well. It's not translating well. So I want you to focus on one guard. That's it. And I was just like, okay, De La Hiva.
Perfect.
I'll focus on De La Hiva. Perfect. So then, I started training actually with these people, and they specialize in bottom, like they play bottom very well. And I rolled with them, and they got me in their De La Hiva and swept me and took my back. They did a bunch of shit.
Oh, wow.
So I went back to my professor, and I was just like, how do you counter that? So then he taught me the counter. And then I went back to that gym, and I'm just watching and, like doing the movements with them and just learning the details, the concepts, things like that. I was able to teach De La Hiva at my school doing like a women's class. And that's been helping me a lot. So by kind of using my ADHD hyperfocus abilities, I've been able to get better at different aspects of the sport.
Yeah. And how does it feel like when you finally nail a technique that you've been working on?
Oh, yeah, it feels so good. Like at the compound, they're all about pressure game, and they're a top heavy school. So I got a lot better at my top game and focused at Blue Belt. I focused for months on like top and pressure, mount, taking the back. And I was able to, like, I'm not going to say I mastered those things because I don't believe that we'll ever master at those things, but I got very good at taking the back, going to mount, getting into side control, staying there, putting pressure on people. So it feels really good. But then my brain wants to go do like, what's next?
Yeah.
Like, where's the more fun?
Yeah. What do I need to do next? And then me getting actually good at top made me want to get good at bottom because I not to put my teammate under the bus because she's a badass, but she when she competed at a large tournament, she got stuck on bottom, and then I struggled on bottom as well. So we're both working on how to get better on the bottom because we might end up there. So like we've been helping each other, doing comp classes together, and working on making sure our guard is not passable.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
So obviously that's what you're working on right now, but do you have a favorite technique overall?
I love the triangle, like from everywhere. I feel like that's one of the first moves I learned as a white belt, and I've modified it many times, and I discovered like, oh, you can do triangle from the back, and before. I'm still trying to figure out how to do triangle from side control. I don't know.
You can do it from north, south, bottom.
Yes, north, south, bottom. Yeah.
Yep, she does that to me.
The best. Just let it transition.
Yeah. So I do it for mount a lot too, which is fun. So that's one of my favorite submissions.
I freaking love it.
Yeah, that's great.
So what kind of like hacks or habits or like little tricks do you have to try to keep the information in your brain and like let it translate to your body the best? Like what works for you?
Yeah, so for me, like I feel like I put certain techniques in certain buckets. So some techniques, while I think are important, may not apply to me. Like there's Jiu Jitsu I learned from like a big body person where I'm like, that's probably not going to work. And my professor's really good about that because he's a smaller man.
Yeah.
And the owner of the gym is a bigger man. And so like an example of that is like passing guard and this type of stance that the bigger man has versus the smaller guy. So with the bigger guy, like they have a wider stance because their base is heavier and they can tolerate that and it's fine. But with the smaller man, like we can't really do that because we're like, you can lift us up and like flip us over and whatnot. And I've tried both ways and I was like, I liked my professor's way more. It's the same technique. It's just slightly, it's modified to fit the smaller body. So, of course I take into account the person's body size who's teaching. And as far as like how I, absorb the technique, like I like to have a discussion with my professor. Like if something resonates with me in the class and I have questions, I'll ask. And then after class, I'll, I'm not challenging him or anything, but asking like, oh, I feel comfortable doing this grip versus the grip you showed in class. Can you tell me why like yours might be more beneficial? Or like, do you think me having my grip here versus like, for example, with De La Riva, like for this specific technique, is it better to have my grip on your sleeve or on the pants? I usually like the pants grip. So he'll talk about like his reasoning and I guess depends on the scenario, things like that. So that's really helped a lot talking to my professor about like my game, and it's like a collaborative process.
Yeah.
So that's why it feels really good, where I'm at now.
Are you pretty open with your professors and like training partners or about being neurodivergent, or like does it take you a little while to kind of open up about that?
I think now I've gotten into a better groove, and like I left places that weren't conducive to my ADHD. So now I feel like more open to talk about it. And, like I tell my friends and people, my teammates, things like that. We joke about our neurodivergence, but also, it doesn't define us. It's just part of who I am. It's not my whole identity.
Right.
And they don't treat me any different. If I raise my hand and be like, show me the technique one more time, my professor will joke and be like, oh my God, but it's fine because they show the technique again and they'll answer my questions. And I've never gotten a combative response from my professors or my teammates. Everyone's really friendly and kind.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
And sometimes I know, like with the different like sensory issues, I'm sure that you have to turn down roles sometimes. And I know that like I always tell all of the students in my classes, especially the women, like you can say no to a round and you do not have to give an answer. Like no is a full sentence. And so like I'm sure that there's been times where you've probably turned down roles. Like how have people responded to that? Or how have you managed that kind of situation?
With saying no?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had too many issues.
That's good.
I said no to like a bigger purple belt guy who's been known to be a bit of a spaz. Also, he sweats a lot, and I don't like that. So I said no. I've said no to him before, and like he still kind of presses on me sometimes, and I'm just like, no, dude, like you're too big. Like I can't. Like, oh, I'll be gentle. I'm like, no, it's not conducive to my game, like my size. I'm 150 pounds. You, sir, are 200 some pounds. Meat cake, so no.
Not a good combo.
Please
not a good
stop. Nothing I do will work.
It's not fun to just be smashed for 5 minutes straight.
No one wants the father's milking that's coming from that man.
No.
So what are your thoughts? You talked about it at first, like the whole like everybody has autism, or everybody with autism is good at Jiu Jitsu, or if you have ADHD, you can learn so many things faster. And I know that's a bunch of shit. I'm sure there are people that get to experience that, but I also know that there are very neurotypical people who also get to experience that. So what are your thoughts on those kind of stereotypes?
Yeah, I think they're definitely harmful and reductive. And also I feel like it's dehumanizing because it just really puts our experiences in a box, and like it just basically puts us in a position of like what we can produce for jiu-jitsu as a whole, rather like whether it's like through medals or like wins or the gym getting attention because they have a prodigy and whatnot. It just basically implies that our value lies in like what we can contribute athletically rather than like who we are as human beings. So people are like neurodivergent people are very diverse. Like you said earlier, autism is a spectrum. And you're going to have within that diverse group, you're going to have pockets of people who they'll join jiu-jitsu and it just clicks and they get their brown belt in 4 years.
Oh yeah.
And they're just that talented. But that doesn't apply for another person that comes in. It's not fair to that person. I mean, it's also not fair to that person who picked up the technique quick too, because now there's this expectation set on that person, and we're not learning about that person as a whole. We're just seeing them as what can this kid or guy, girl do for our gym. We can put our gym's name out there. Oh, look at all the medals she won.
Right.
But also like another person that comes in that may not have that same talent, they'll come in, they're struggling, and they're thinking like, this person's autistic too, so why the hell can't she pick up like what's his face?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's not fair.
It minimizes the person who did have the talent to get that belt in a short period of time, because that isn't the norm, right? So that person was clearly more talented than the large masses of people. So they should be able to celebrate that accomplishment that not everybody gets.
Exactly. And, you know, like they should celebrate that too. But then it's like, oh, you know, like, oh, that person got a black belt in 5 years. Like,
well, they must be autistic.
They got their purple in a year. They got their brown in 3 years. Like, you know, it's not celebrated. It's like expected.
Right.
For them,
exactly.
You know? And it's like, that's not fair. So it's almost like robotic in a sense. And then there's this assumption that like, oh, autistic people are robots, or like they don't have emotions and feelings. They do.
Oh, yeah.
They have challenges just like any one of us does, you know. Me having ADHD, it has not made me more talented in Jiu Jitsu. It's actually been more difficult doing Jiu Jitsu. Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that part of it too, because it's like they expect you to get it figured out, and like, yeah, some things click like magic, and then other things I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck just happened.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There was a child talking in the lobby, and I've missed the whole class. Like,
right. Yeah, exactly.
It's like gone.
What are some other like stereotypes or myths about neurodivergent grapplers that you want to address or correct?
I would say, like, going back to the emotion part, like, we don't have feelings. We're all naturally good at, you know, whatever thing we focus on, that we're all like savants or something like that, which also that's another
bunch of shit. Yeah.
Thing. Yeah, exactly. That we lack the skill set to form bonds with people and relationships, and that we can't lead normal lives. That we're weird, we can't hold down jobs. That's not true at all.
Right. I told somebody the other day, I'm waiting for the part where, because I have a diagnosis, means I don't have to pay taxes anymore. So if they're willing to make that promise, I will accept that.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, man. So what advice would you give to somebody who may not even have an actual diagnosis, but is feeling some of these sorts of ways? If they're just starting their jiu-jitsu journey, what would you advise them to kind of take into consideration?
I think, speaking personally, as someone who has ADHD, you know, once I got into it, I got so obsessed with it and like dove in like head first into this journey, and it eventually caught up to me, and I got burned out and I crashed out, and it was a pretty horrible experience. But part of that was because I didn't have an identity prior to jiu-jitsu. I didn't know who I was. I was just surviving and masking and you know, just trying to live in this complicated world. And then I came into jiu-jitsu, and things started. At the time I thought, oh, things are clearing up, and like I'm starting to know who I am, and jiu-jitsu saved my life and all this, you know, BS. But I would caution my neurodivergent peers to just, you know, dip your toes into it. You know, don't get so caught up. I'm witnessing this myself with like a blue belt who's just like, they're just on a grind, and they're just like training, and like that person's also injured, and they keep training. They keep getting themselves in this loop of like, they're losing, they're not podiuming, or like they get second place, they're frustrated, so then they go back and train, and they're not taking any breaks. And like this person's knee is still messed up, and you know, I just tell them like, you know, please like take it easy. Like there's always going to be competitions. There's always going to be time for you to get better. But right now you need to heal up. So that's my advice, is
Yeah.
just take it easy, take it slow. You're not going to get good in a day. If you have autism or ADHD or other neurodivergence, don't fall for those stereotypes that like, oh my God, why am I not good? Like, I
Right.
should be good because I have autism. No,
It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work that way. You're not Helena Travar.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Not everybody has the gift.
and just know that's rare. That's very rare. Most of us are average.
That's why we all know who she is.
Right, exactly. Don't feel bad for being average. There's nothing wrong with being average.
Yes. Yes. That's huge.
Do you have any advice for parents of neurodivergent kids that might be thinking about getting their kids into jiu-jitsu?
I would just say, don't push your kids too hard and try to live vicariously. If you're having some midlife crisis, like, don't pull your kids into
Yes.
Like, just because you wanted to be a jiu-jitsu superstar when you were a kid, and then again, like the assumption with like the savant and the prodigy, like, don't think, oh, like my kid's going to be a prodigy and yada yada. That's very harmful, and that puts so much unnecessary pressure on the child. Let them have fun and like enjoy. Let them play.
Yes.
If they tell you they don't like jiu-jitsu, like, talk to them. Actually talk to them. Like, why do you not like it? And if it's maybe like superficial reasons, I can't think of any at the moment. But if they're just like, I want to try another sport, then let them try another sport and then maybe come back to jiu-jitsu later. It's not the end of the world. Like, there's so many sports, and maybe they'll be better at another sport.
Absolutely. How can coaches or gyms be more welcoming to neurodivergent athletes? What would you offer to them?
Yeah, I know as far as like how the gym, what is it, like the structure of the gym, physical structure, like sometimes that can't really be changed. You know, that's expensive and that's hard to do. But what you can do is there are things that can be changed, like your attitude and the way you perceive neurodivergent people. You can change that through learning about neurodivergent people, and also just asking questions. If someone tells you like, oh, I have ADHD or I have autism, don't respond and be like, well, everyone's got a little bit of autism, or like,
God,
like, oh, I'm a little ADHD, like I'm running around.
Aren't we all? Oh,
ADHD.
fuck off.
No, we're not. We're not.
That's what I say about being gay. Everybody's a little gay, but
exactly. I'm a little gay. No,
I mean, but I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, well, yeah, everybody probably is a little bit gay, but like, but I don't know. Maybe there's people out there that aren't. I don't know.
Exactly.
I haven't met one yet.
Yes.
Or one that would admit.
So just, listen to them and learn about neurodivergent people. Don't stereotype. Don't assume they're going to be Helena Kravar. like stop it.
Yeah. I always tell people I'm old and I don't know shit, but in like 6 months, you'll see that I did attend class.
Yes.
Things will come back.
Comes together randomly one day.
Yeah, literally. And then I'm like, oh, okay. Well, it's not so bad.
Exactly.
So in your ideal world, what would like a truly inclusive jiu-jitsu space look like to you?
Yes, a truly inclusive jiu-jitsu space would look like a place where people, like, I think, coaches and professors, they set the tone. The owner sets the tone of the gym. So in a space that's inclusive, the coaches are knowledgeable. They hold themselves accountable. So, if they make a mistake, they, apologize, and they're like an actual legitimate apology, not like, oh, I'm sorry you feel this way, but more so like, I'm sorry I did X, Y, and Z, and here's what I'm going to do to change to make sure I don't have that behavior again. So like for me, the truly inclusive space, it's not necessarily about the physicality of the gym, but it's more so the attitudes of the coaches, because that sets the tone and that brings similar-minded people into the gym too. So it'll attract people who are more drawn to inclusive spaces. As far as like, if I could choose like a gym space, like somewhere that's clean, and then every time there's a puddle of sweat, it's wiped off
immediately
and sprayed. Yes, like after the round, someone comes in with like the spray, with a backpack spray.
Yeah.
And they just mop that sweat up.
People are standing by with some Purell every time you have to reset.
Every time they sweat, and then, someone, if they sweat buckets, they change into a fresh gi.
Softer gis that absorb all of the sweat, but you can't tell it's in there.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, geez.
I love it.
Mallory's got some
Yeah. I've just like so loved this conversation, and we really, really appreciate you sharing all of this. I think people are going to get so much out of it.
I do have one more question before Mallory jumps into rapid fires.
Okay.
For people who don't understand what neurodivergent means, how do you describe that?
Oh, God. Okay.
I know, it's so hard.
It is hard. I would say, in simple terms, we're just wired differently than neurotypical people. Maybe that's like the short answer. We process information differently. We have, we just have a different brain.
Exactly.
So that's
that's pretty much what I use too. Yeah, no, and I think it's the thing that could like explain it the most, right? Because it's a difference. It's not a problem. So that's what
it's not.
Keep trying to let people know is it's just different. That's all it means.
Right, exactly.
Physically not the same. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you for jumping into that one.
All right,
no problem.
So I always like to close out our episodes with a little bit of rapid fire questions, if you are open to doing that.
Okay, cool.
All right. So some of them will be Jiu Jitsu related, some of them not. So
okay.
All right. First thing that comes to your mind: cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Gi or no gi?
Gi.
Road trip or plane ride?
Plane ride.
Mount or back control?
Back control.
All right. Roll with a beginner or with a black belt?
Black belt.
Always.
Always. I'm I guess it would depend how I'm feeling that day. Do I want to get smashed or do I want to do the smashing?
Yeah.
Do I want to be the hammer or the nail today? All right. Wrist locks or heel hooks?
Wrist lock.
Comedies or dramas?
Comedy.
All right. Ice cream or cake?
Ice cream.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh God, I don't know. Manipulate people's vibes.
If you had a super fight tomorrow, what would your walkout song be? The pressure.
Oh, that's so hard. Oh man. Oh, I don't know.
This trips everybody up.
It really does.
It does. It trips me up. God.
What about what genre would it be?
It would be hip hop though.
There you go.
I don't know, X gonna give it to you.
Yes, love that.
Yeah.
And then the last question that I ask everybody is, if your best friend had to describe you in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
Funny, quirky, and kind.
I love that.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Oh, well, is there anything else that you want to share, or any plugs, or how do people find you?
Yes. My page is Neurodivergent _Grappler. I post almost Monday through Friday. Sometimes I discombobulated and don't post, but for the most part, I'm getting into swing of things. I'm still growing my page and figuring it out and the goals I have. In the near future, my goal, like I'm working right now with a company to create a neurodivergent grappler rash guard. So my hope is to have that out by summer for pre-order.
Cool.
Super fun.
My dream with that page now is to monetize from it so that I can sponsor neurodivergent athletes to compete at major tournaments. So they don't need competition experience or anything like that. Even local tournaments too. Just people who want to compete and go out there. It'd be cool to wear my gear and have them out there on the mats competing.
That's awesome.
Well, we will have ourselves on the pre-order list when those come out.
Yes.
Oh, thanks.
Definitely. So will those pre-orders, can they find that on your Instagram page?
Yes, I'll post that on my Instagram page. And then, I think at this point, I probably will need a website. So I will get in that process if my ADHD will allow me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Blue, for doing this. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Yes, and we hope to chat more in the future because I feel like there's so much more that we can talk to you about and learn from you. Yeah. So I hope that we can talk again in the future.
Yes, we definitely should. I'm excited.
Excellent. All right, Blue. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, cheers.
Bye.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Check us out on Instagram at Chokeholds and Chill Pod or shoot us a message at chokeholdsandchillpod@gmail.com.